It's our Q&A segment where we are answering questions that you have submitted. You can always submit your questions by text 864-428-7131, or you can DM us on social media at Moremost Forever. But Victoria, what is the question of the week?
This question of the week is, how should one parent respond to their spouse being disrespected by their children?
So this is a parenting question.
Parenting question. But I think, again, it goes hand in hand what we've talked about of writing a mission and vision. Like, if you are not in tune together as a spouse, your kids are little psychologists, maybe big psychologists if they're teens. They know exactly how to pin you against one another.
That's right.
And so that's the challenging part about parenting, is that it's not only that you're responsible for physical provision of your children, but you need to give them guidance and direction. And oftentimes, sometimes kids act out because they are crying out for attention, partially. And then there's also the aspects of boundaries. All kids crave boundaries. And I know that's an odd way for a child to ask for boundaries, but you have to be very firm about, this is what our household values. This is the values of this house, and this is what you're going to uphold. And you're not going to disrespect your mom. You're not going to disrespect your dad. One of the things that I love that we do, in our family, is if one of our children raises their voice at, let's say, Ryan, I'm pretty quick about saying, don't you raise your voice at your dad. And the same thing with Ryan. Whenever he notices one of the children raising their voice or talking back, he will actually jump in. Like, he's not even part of the conversation. And so being proactive about that, I think, helps to put a stop before the kids get to a place of disrespect. Now, the kids will step into disrespect if you're actually disrespecting your spouse in front of them.
True.
And so you have to gauge where your relationship is with your spouse and what your respect level is with them.
Are they reflecting what you're treating your spouse like?
Yeah, and sometimes that's exactly what you need to address.
And there's a couple things I can say here. Number one, we dispel the idea of a good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
If one person has implemented a punishment, the other one abides by it. And not only that, we affirm it. And if our child comes and asks us for something, if it's beyond the scope of something very simple or menial, I'll holler out to Victoria, did you already address this? Or I'll ask my child directly, did you get an answer from your mother about this already? And if it turns out that they lied about that question, then they're getting it from both of us, right? That punishment is coming down. But it's important what you said about the children reflecting your behavior, because it's interesting. We've taken on this thing where we don't fight, right? We never go into name calling. We never resort to physical attacks or anything like that. We do raise our voices with one another, and sometimes that could come out of hand. We don't have screaming matches, that's for sure, but our conversations do get heated, as many of yours probably do as well. We don't do that behind closed doors. We are not afraid of those conversations being had in front of our kids, even if they don't understand everything that we're saying. And there will be times when our children will try to correct us, or they think, my daughter in particular, she thinks that she can negotiate with me like her mom does. No, we are equals here. Mom and me, we're equals. We can talk, we can debate, we can come to a conclusion, and we can argue back and forth and wrestle until we get something resolved from whatever we're talking about. As a child, you don't have that right. And so I have to affirm that and say, you can express your opinion, absolutely. But once dad makes a final decision, there is no reversing that. And just like a king, if we make a decree as parents in our household, we cannot undo that decree. We have to make a subsequent decree that allows for privileges on top of that. So if that's a rule of the house, I'm not bending to accommodate any crying or pleading or any of that. And certainly, if you think that you are going to raise your voice to your mother, even if her and I have had conversations that are heated. That doesn't mean it gives you the right to as well. Now, on an extreme side of things, like Victoria mentioned, if you are disrespectful to your spouse outside of just heated conversations, like we're both passionate, if you're calling them out of their name, if we see that duplicated, you call them a B or a, whatever the word is, your son is going to call her the same thing and view her in that level of with that level of disrespect. Now, the thing about what we do as well, we want to let our kids see us resolve our conflict. At the end of the day, if we have a heated conversation, they're still going to see us hold hands and come together. We're walking out that door as a family. We're going to show love to one another, as best as we can in those moments. And they're going to see us. Mom and dad, they might have had a disagreement, but at the end of the day, we're still a family. We're still one, and they still respect one another.
Yeah, we're still in one accord, and we are going to make sure that we show respect to one another, but make sure we stand up for the other spouse if we feel our child all of a sudden starts raising their voice at them. So,
and the last thing I will say about that before we end the podcast is that if your child is disrespecting you and your spouse is not around, this needs to be one of those needed conversations that you have with them. Whether it's pillow talk at night once the kids have gone to bed and say, listen, this child is disrespecting me in this way, and I need you to address it. And they say, okay, I'm going to address it. The next question I would ask out of my mind, especially if this is a woman approaching her husband, would be, when are you going to be able to address that? Let me ask this, honey. Can you take the kids to school tomorrow and have a talk with them on the way to school? Or make sure that you set in motion, like that when them kids get back from school, they've already had a talk with dad. So it's a clear communication, like he's already addressed it this morning. So if they come back with that same attitude, I'm picking up that phone and I'm calling dad, and you better guess what? He's going to be ticked off that he had to answer that phone at work or wherever he is. And when he comes back, he's going to lay down the law. Vice versa, it may happen the other way around as well. Typically, it happens the way I just described, with kids disrespecting the mother and the father needing to speak up. But it could happen the other way. It's just about clear communication and then also addressing the way that you're speaking to one another.
Yeah, but if you wanted to have one of your questions answered, be sure to message us at 864-428-7131. Or again, you can message us through DM by going to @MoreMostForever, and we hopefully will answer one of your questions on our next episode.